Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. This channel is all about education, about learning different theories of everything and the ramifications. And we've been, for the last several months, been working on learning up on the reciprocal system of theory. And the reciprocal system of theory is a theory of everything first proposed by Dewey B. Larson back in the middle of the 20th century. And after a few decades of research, he finally put out his two fundamental postulates and then went from there to writing books based on those postulates. The first and major postulate is that the universe that we live in is made out of motion. And for Larson, motion was the relationship between space and time. And basically that sets up a generalized reciprocal relationship between space and time. Motion is basically a fraction that has space or time as the numerator and time or space as the denominator. And there are many different kinds of motion that we generally refer to as scientific units. So we have speed. We recognize speed to be space over time. The bike is moving at 20 miles of space in 1 hour of time, 20 miles per hour, space over time. And to a certain extent, we also recognize acceleration, space over time to the second power. I dropped the ball out the window and it fell at 9.8 meters per second squared, or per second per second. And so that is space over time squared. And all of the other scientific quantities that we know of also can be expressed exclusively through time over a fraction, time over space, or space over time. Now, the other part of Larson's postulate there is that space or time have their coordinate aspects, meaning that they come in 3 or more dimensions, and they also have their clock aspects, meaning that they are progressing or flowing or getting, in the case of time, getting later and later and later, or in the case of space, getting farther and farther and farther apart. And then space and time also have their discrete units only. There is no continuity of space or time. They come in chunks, small, very small chunks, but chunks nonetheless. If you do not have a full chunk of space, then you do not have space, and you only have time. And if you have less than a full chunk of time, then you don't have time, and you only have space. And if you have exactly one chunk of space in one chunk of time, you have the speed of light. And so for Larson, the speed of light is the boundary of the universe, separating two separate sectors of the universe. For him, there is a material sector, which is everything that's moving less than the speed of light. And then there is the cosmic sector. That's for everything that's moving faster than the speed of light. And that is somewhat baffling to the legacy scientists. They knew about the material sector, but not so much about the cosmic sector. And then within the material sector, you have what Larson calls the time region. That is a sub-region within the material sector where space is less than 1 unit. If you have less than 1 unit of space, then you don't have space. So you only have time. Larson calls that the time region. And that's the realm of, atoms and molecules. And then in the cosmic sector, where everything's moving faster than the speed of light, you have what Larson calls the space region. This is where everything is, the units are less than a unit of time. If you have less than a unit of time, you don't have time, you only have space. And this is the realm of what Larson calls cosmic matter, cosmic atoms and cosmic molecules. The legacy scientists would have called it the antimatter, or anti-molecules. And so you have basically four sectors of the universe divided. The boundaries are made up of the unit boundaries, a unit of space, a unit of time, and a unit of speed. Okay. And then Larson, that's really the first postulate. The second postulate is disputed by some of his followers and not as important, but it basically says that the universe conforms to to ordinary commutative mathematics. Its magnitudes are absolute, and its geometry is Euclidean. Now, that Euclidean geometry is particularly problematic for especially Dr. Bruce Perret, who felt that the universe, the geometry of the universe was projective geometry, of which Euclidean geometry is just a subset. So it's not exactly saying that Larson is wrong, but that he was just not inclusive enough, and that the Euclidean geometry that he was talking about just represents part of his universe of motion, and that a less specific part of the universe would be the projective geometry. There's actually a geometrical cascade between going from projective geometry to affine geometry to metric geometry and then to Euclidean geometry. We'll be talking about that at some point in the future. Today we're looking at an article that was written by Dr. Bruce Perret a few years before he died, back in 2020. Larson died back in 1990, just for reference. And Dr. Perret wrote a number of articles under the name Daniel Phoenix III, who was a character who was supposed to be one of the young computer programmers for the Montauk Project. This was a government top secret black ops project out on Long Island, and in the early 1980s. A lot of it was for time travel experiments. And he wrote 4 articles that were part of his anthropology series on the hidden origins of Homo sapiens. And this is the third of those 4 articles. The first 2 are in previous videos. We've been working on these for about a month, so if you want to go back and start at the beginning, you want to go back about a month to the first Daniel paper. This article is called Homo Sapiens Ethicus, Life, Death, Reincarnation, and Ascension. And we are most of the way through this article. This is probably about the 7th or 8th day working on this particular article, and so you would want to go back about a week to start at the beginning here. But we are upon a section here that's called Evolution of the Species. So where does this path of life, death, reincarnation, ascension, bioenergy, auras, and psychology lead to? A doorway that is the next stage of human evolution, the ethical man. taking his place as a peaceful explorer of the universe. So why is this happening now? First, a quick review of intervention upon our world by extraterrestrial visitors, of which there were three major groups: the Cyclopeans, the Titans, and the Anunnaki, who are the descendants of the Titan named An, or Anu. Followed by some locals called the Cabal. These days, the descendants of the Anunnaki, along with the local inhabitants whom we have been here all along, or whom have been here all along, the LMs, or that's an abbreviation for the little men. So that includes elves and sprites and the Knock and other somewhat mythical characters. And he's got a little flowchart here, and he's got a long. It's kind of interesting. The little men apparently led to the Akkadians. That's Sargon's people from about the 2400 BC, and the line, and he's got some of the eras here. The Cyclopeans were part of the Paleozoic era, and then they basically ascended, and so they left the planet, and then they were replaced later on by the Titans, and he calls that the Mesozoic era. Then their offspring were the Anunnaki. They were the ones, I guess, that were born on Earth of the Titans. And he calls that the Cenozoic era. And then that leads to the Cabal. The Akkadians eventually, he's saying that they were living in Mu and Sumeria, and then Atlantis is a later period, and those are the human hybrids that were a combination of the Saurian men, which are, I guess, the Titans, and the Anunnaki. And then in their experiment, they apparently were experimenting with the Akkadians. I don't know. I don't get that part, but that's kind of what his flowchart says, and hopefully he'll explain it here. As mentioned earlier, the Cyclopeans were an advanced philosophical species that came here looking for a type of monastic environment, somewhere out of the way to complete their research on ascension to the next octave of existence. In those days, our world was called Tiamat, meaning the final place of our love. The presence of these highly advanced beings, because of the non-local effects of bioenergy and auras, accelerated evolution on Tiamat, causing the explosion of life that heralded the beginning of the Cambrian period of the Paleozoic era. Upon completion of their research, they left Tiamat by ascending to the Theta octave, leaving their monastic cities behind, along with an archive of their travels and researches, a kind of roadmap for those who may choose to follow. And he says here, we currently exist in the eta octave of the seven densities, which is the seventh octave of the evolution of consciousness. And he calls that archive the archive of the ancients, referred to as the little red brick schoolhouse in the research of George Hunt Williamson, and can be accessed by any life that has developed a level 3 ethical consciousness. And he says that it was also part of the Stargate SG-1 TV series as the repository of the ancients. And here also in the footnotes, he talks about LMs, little men, refers to the mythological beings such as fairies, dwarves, sprites, etc., along with the great apes, dolphins, and Neanderthal precursors. Basically, all the native life on the planet that evolved to obtain a higher degree of consciousness. Okay, those are just a couple of the footnotes. This article itself already has 63 footnotes, so I haven't been going over all of them, but I'm just trying to get the most relevant ones. Okay, back to the text. Long after the Cyclopeans ascended, another group arrived in our solar system, but not with such spiritual aspirations. They came here to exploit the natural resources of a newly developing solar system for more militaristic reasons, as our mythology speaks of the warmongering gods of old, the Titans. Tiamat, or Earth, was not actually their destination. They just stopped by to make a survey, then proceeded on to Mars, which, being further out from our early orange sun, remembering that astronomy is backwards, meaning the evolution of stars is backwards. Normally, they say that you go from an O star to a B star to A to K to G. O to B to A to F to G to K to M. And Perret is saying that, and Larson is saying that that is backwards, and it actually goes in the opposite order. That's the evolution of stars. Okay, so our early orange sun was further along the evolutionary path than Tiamat was. Mars, that is. Making it more suitable for colonization. And the Titans colonized Mars, using it as a base to access the enormous heavy metal resources of the asteroid belt. As the millennia passed, Mars had become fully established, and, as Orson Welles so aptly put it, yet across an immense ethereal gulf, minds that to our minds as ours are to the beasts of the jungle, intellects vast, cool, and unsympathetic, regarded this earth with envious eyes and slowly and surely drew their plans against us. Us, in this context, being the native LM inhabitants that have been growing and evolving on Tiamat, or Earth, courtesy of the Cyclopeans. The Titans dispatched An, A-N, and his progeny to Tiamat to begin colonization under the direction of Enki, An's oldest son, chief engineer and scientist. The colony was known as Eridu in Mu, so he's equating Mu to Sumeria. The planet became known as Ea's Eridu, later truncated to Earth. The colonization, exploitation, and subjection of the Earth was the responsibility of An's progeny, the Anunnaki. They founded the original colony in the motherland, Mu, then expanded over to the Americas, Antarctica, as the Atlantean era, where they ran into some trouble. The barbarian rebels, with assistance of one of their own, Enki, who became technologically advanced enough to put up a considerable amount of resistance to the Anunnaki gods. And these LMs did, and after a centuries-long but successful attack on their home world of Mars, forced the Anunnaki off Earth. This version that that Perret is telling right here is it's quite at variance to the version that Zecharia Sitchin would tell you, basically of the same subject matter, but a different take on this. So humanity has literally been caught in the middle as a hybrid of SM and LM genetics. The pure line of descendants from the Adamic stock became the overlords of the planet, the nobility, royalty, or blue bloods that were the original children of the gods, a mixture of Adamic and SM genetics. The remainder of the hybrids interbred with us low-life Neanderthals, becoming more like the red-blooded natives, then slaves to serve the gods. And that is where you find us today, this cabal of self-appointed rulers of the planet, keeping all the knowledge and secrets of their SM ancestry and technology to themselves, with the peasants to do their bidding. Over the centuries, Homo sapiens, the thinking man, did exactly that. Man was genetically engineered with a significantly higher intelligence than the great apes, and easily became the top of the food chain, namely the best killers on the planet, courtesy of those SM genetics. This boosted intelligence was split over the two realms of biological life. Half went to the corpus, embodied in the brain, what is termed thinking, coupled to the physical sensations. The other half went to the anima, expressed in the heart, feeling, coupled to the temporal senses as intuition. These concepts form the basis of psychological typology as rational thinking, which are rational, which includes thinking and feeling, and irrational, which includes sensation and intuition types. Occasionally, mankind would think and feel at the same time, bringing balance to both halves of the biological organism, and realizing that these psychological valuing systems were just two aspects of something else. Some kind of ethical or spiritual side manifest in physical reality, and the study of alchemy was born. An attempt to document and reproduce this access to a kind of spiritual motion, access to Larson's Sector 3 control units, and the ethical level of existence. Okay, and one interesting footnote here that he has is there's evidence that An He doesn't say what the evidence is, but he says there is evidence that An was a title, not a name, and the entity's name was Ea. Um, as far as I know, Ea was the other name for Enki. That way, Ea's Eridu would always refer to the entity, not the job, in historical accounts, much like July is for Julius Caesar and August is for Augustus Caesar. We don't have a month called Caesar. Yeah, I don't get that. Okay, to the next page. Alchemical spiritual knowledge. Okay, let's start the sentence again here. Alchemy, unfortunately, this is a very long sentence. Occasionally, mankind would think and feel at the same time, bringing balance to both halves of the biological organism and realizing that these psychological valuing systems were just two aspects of something else, some kind of ethical or spiritual side manifest in physical reality, and the study of alchemy was born, an attempt to document and reproduce this access to a kind of spiritual motion, access to Larson's Sector 3 control units and the level of existence. Alchemical spiritual knowledge gave mankind the ability to advance beyond being a slave and automaton to the nobility, and he started to do just that with some covert assistance from the LMs as far back as the 16th century. This, however, was doomed to failure as the population levels were still small enough that the occasional plague could handle any insurrection and put people back into a state of fear, running to the nobles for protection behind their large, impregnable castle walls. In order to compensate for the developing spirituality in mankind, nobility was split into two factions, governments and religions. Again, two aspects of the same nobility. So when people became upset with government, they could turn to religion to save them. When religion started the Inquisitions and the people became upset again, they could run back to government to save them. This oscillation has been going on for centuries. It takes about two centuries for people to get upset with one aspect to switch over to the other, but still under control of the same group of nobles. In current world affairs, led by the United States of America, Inc., we have the same situation. Yet again, people are fed up with government lies, spying, and abuse, and are turning to the Christian religion to save them, demanding to live free under God, otherwise known as Enlil. There will be a short time of prosperity at the switchover, then back to the same old thing. Just one dictator replacing another, unless mankind decides enough is enough and makes a conscious choice to take the next step in human evolution, dump rivalry, embrace rapport, and become peaceful explorers of the universe in all its forms as Homo sapiens ethicus, the ethical man. Okay, that is the end of that section, and I think that is the end for today. The next section is going to be called Humanity, the Next Generation, Homo sapiens ethicus. And we are getting pretty close to the end of this article, so we might wrap it up tomorrow. Might take 2 days. Yeah, I mean, I thought that last paragraph was germane, and you know, we keep oscillating back and forth between the government and the religions, and at some point, you know, we're going to need to red pill ourselves a little bit more. it seems like there's one group of people who are red pilled about government lies, and then there are another group of people who are red pilled about religious lies. But neither the twain shall meet, so it seems. And I'm not exactly sure. You know, we seem to be starting to become more awakened to the government lies these days, but the religious lies seem to be continuing to claim our allegiance for no reason whatsoever. You know, in my experience, you know, I look at some of these religious texts and it's just kind of like, you expect me to believe this? I'm I'm red pilled. You know, I'm not going to just accept a text just because that's what it says. You know, who wrote this? Where did it come from? What was their angle? What were their motivations? These questions don't seem to be asked by the truthers these days. They just accept it as you know, as being a historical document or something where you know, it is certainly needs to be subjected to some kind of scrutiny, and looking at who benefits from this, and looking at you know, are there any antecedents of this, looking for some archaeological evidence of this, looking you know, at all kinds of different angles, you know, of who might have written this, that maybe you know, I mean, I would just say that you know, they're all mythologies. You know, they all may have various useful aspects to them, but to take them literally is, I mean, just way out in almost as naive as, you know, some of these um, government shills or whatever. So, okay, we will take over with this next section starting tomorrow. And thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.